Hi, I'm Mark Tyrrell of Uncommon Knowledge and hypnosisdownloads.com, and welcome to Fear of Abandonment, 5 specific tasks to help you overcome abandonment issues. Now, a recent client said to me, I used to have this recurring nightmare. I'd be standing on a rain-swept street corner, utterly alone, totally abandoned, lost. I always wondered why I had that recurring dream. Then, one day, it happened for real. My mother walked out on all of us. Sam, a client from years back, told his story, and I was quickly reminded of my own maternal grandfather's early life, who had a similar experience. When he was 4, his mother my great-great-grandmother, had walked out on him, his 3 brothers and father, saying she was off to get some milk, which in the subtext was she was off to be with her lover, who was a famous film star of the time. For years after, my grandfather always somehow hoped the appearance of fresh milk in the house would signify the imminent return of his mother, which of course it never did. I never knew him, my grandfather, but by all accounts he showed signs of emotional insecurity throughout his whole life. What is fear of abandonment when we really think about it? First off, just because someone has been abandoned at some point in their life, it doesn't inevitably mean they'll come to have a morbid fear of being abandoned later in life. People react to life and circumstances in all different kinds of ways. I've known many people suffer awful and sudden abandonment and years of loneliness and still not have any real issues trusting other people or feeling secure in relationships. So we can't assume that there's an inevitability to how people respond to being abandoned or anything. Then again, some people who were never actually abandoned develop the fear, perhaps because they love so passionately. They've never learnt emotional independence, maybe, or they misuse their imagination to scare themselves. So all those factors can play a part in the fear of abandonment. So if you have a fear of abandonment, it may stem from experiences you've actually had, or it might simply be a fear of experiences you'd hate to have in your life. People who have an undue fear of abandonment are more likely to be less likely to trust others, be cynical with the idea that, people always let you down in the end, feel anxious and insecure, looking for signs that abandonment is about to happen, or finding signs where there aren't any signs, behave in a clingy and demanding way, which in itself can damage the very relationship they fear losing. So here are some tips to help you overcome fear of abandonment. 1. As a general rule, stop over-generalizing. I recall treating a man who'd been traumatized after being mugged 2 years before, and all 3 of his muggers had heavy beards. Now, whenever he saw any man with a beard, he became anxious. So fear does that to us. It has us overgeneralizing. It makes us overgeneralize a possible threat. Of course, not all men with beards are muggers. A woman might say, I was left by my husband, no men can be trusted. A man might say, I was cheated on by my wife, I can't trust any women. Someone I love left me, never allow yourself to love because you'll always be hurt. And these are sentiments that people have. Even if they don't say them, they might be feelings that they have or hidden assumptions sort of sitting at the back of their unconscious, determining their behavior and feelings. This overgeneralizing prevents people trusting and truly committing to all kinds of different relationships, because people and circumstances are different, and until we can feel the difference, we'll condemn ourselves to needlessly unhappy lives. What's the difference between that situation or that person and this person? So, realize when you're tarring everyone and every situation with the same brush. Really start to focus on the differences between people and circumstances. When we're frightened, we avoid. This is natural. But if we're frightened of what we need, then this avoidance in itself makes us unhappy. If you're frightened to socialize, but you need other people, then the avoidance will make you unhappy. 2. Name your fear. Unmask the beast. Fear of abandonment is a bit vague. Okay. Sam, who I was talking about earlier, had actually been diagnosed by another therapist as having abandonment issues. But again, this is too vague. What does that actually mean? And diagnosis is not the same as treatment. Well, it could be an initial part of it, but it's not the end of all treatment. What exactly are you afraid of? I asked him. Well, I feel anxious whenever I'm in a relationship. And I continued to ask what he feared might happen. And eventually he said, I'm terrified she'll leave me and I'll feel all alone in the world, as I did when my mother abandoned us. So now we were getting more specific. It's that particular feeling that he fears. How old were you then? I asked him. And he said, 7. So he'd been 7 years old. And how old are you now? I asked him. 38, he told me. And you're frightened that somehow, if the relationship did end, that she left you, you'd feel as helpless and as lost as a 7-year-old. And he thought about that and he said, yeah, I guess so. I guess that's right. Now, I did some hypnotic work with Sam, and we spent the remainder of that session focusing on how he was different now, 30 years later, what skills he'd developed, what strategies he'd learned, what he knew now that he didn't know when he was 7, how he'd cope if she did leave, and how this woman was a very different character from his mother. Not all women are the same, not all men are the same. You are different now to how you were in the past. Think about those differences. Whittle it down. What specifically are you afraid of beyond indistinct labels such as fear of abandonment or abandonment issues and these just made up words? 3, sort out the past. Being a solution-focused therapist, I'm not the sort of person to dwell unduly on the past, digging through old hurts or trying to get to the root of it all through psychological archaeology. Okay. So often that doesn't help beyond giving someone a sense of why they feel bad. It doesn't help them see how they can actually move on always. Now, of course, sometimes the past does keep tripping someone up in the present time, so we do need to do something, but it's not enough just to explore what happened. We need to reframe it or to get them feeling differently about the past in some way so that it no longer bothers them. Okay. If someone's been traumatized by something, you don't just take them back through the trauma or explore the trauma, you help lift the trauma. Now, there's a great hypnotic exercise which helped Sam immensely. I had him focus on all his adult traits and abilities and learnings and perspectives and think of a trusted adult friend. Next, with a sense of the presence of that friend and his own adult attributes and perspectives, I had him hypnotically go comfort his 7-year-old self. He was to put his arms around him, his much younger self, and tell him not to worry because everything was going to be okay in the future. And he went back to a time when he felt particularly bad on first learning his mother wouldn't be coming back. Afterwards, he reported feeling much calmer and at peace for the first time he could remember. 4, in the words of the song, I will survive, and so will you. Prepare for the worst and then forget about it. Often when people are abandoned, whether because someone leaves or even dies, they feel utterly hopeless and helpless, but you never are these things. Write down a list of all, and I do mean all, your personal strengths, attributes and character traits that would get you through if you were to be abandoned. Next, write down a list of people and outside resources that would help you survive. Even take some time to imagine how you cope. Then not just cope, but thrive after a breakup. When you stop thinking of yourself as hopeless and helpless, you stop feeling so vulnerable and you start enjoying your relationship more. You can enjoy your relationship more when you have the background confidence that even if it did end, you'd somehow still be okay and it wouldn't be that difficult. And that reminds me, the last tip. 5, enjoy your relationships. All we ever really have is right here right now. Your only reality at this present exact moment is listening to my voice, and I suddenly feel very honoured. Everything else, the people you know, the past, hope and fears for the future, all that stuff only exists in your mind because you're not with those people or in the past or future right now. You're here with me in a sense. Nothing lasts forever, so enjoy where you're at the moment and who you're with at the moment. And remember that when you choose to trust someone, you are, in effect, presenting them with a gift. How they treat that gift that you've given them is a reflection of them and not necessarily you. Stop thinking in terms of abandonment, because it's more realistic to think in terms of splitting up or relationships breaking down or things not working out. The idea of abandonment is a very dramatic one. It implies you're more powerless than you really are. You're not a baby bird that's been left in the nest and can't fly yet. Or to use another animal analogy, just like a fully grown lion who doesn't know he's grown, still thinking he's a small and powerless lion cub. We fear we'll be as helpless as we felt way back when. In fact, we all change, and you can use those changes. And I only wish that I'd known my maternal grandfather. So I hope you found that useful, and if you did, please hit like and subscribe. And if you want to hear when my next video is published, hit the notification bell below this video. I'm Mark Tyrrell of Uncommon Knowledge and hypnosisdownloads.com, and if you'd like to try some of my personal development products, head over to hypnosisdownloads.com and take a look around. And thanks for watching.